All right, friends, we're coming to the end. We'll begin now, yeah? So I sent yesterday something. That's like the next one. But I forgot we didn't conclude our discussion till now. So I sent again this morning, the last thing on the Fabrengen chat. So it's page 193. And this is really the most personally relevant part of the whole Sikha, page 193, Ois Vav, chapter 6. Namely, so why is it that of the two out of the three elements that make a gear, a conversion, only two of them are critical, even though all three happened, namely, Milah, Tvila, and Korban, circumcision, immersion, and a Korban. And even though we also learned that if the time of the Beis Hamikdash, if the ger did not bring his Korban, he would not be able to eat kachim, any sacrificial food, meaning to say meat from any korbanos. So how is it that, notwithstanding that nowadays we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, the conversion is complete 100%? Not as we would expect, that there's just no laws of gear until we have a Beis Hamikdash. Like many laws don't apply nowadays because there's no Beis Hamikdash, you can't observe it. Not so. Gear has been happening. And I should say share with you the following interesting statement in Masechet Pesachim. The Gemara says the following statement: "Leihigla b'nei Yisrael beina umayis ela kadeshi teisef behem geirim." That means that the Jewish people were not exiled amongst the nations of the world other than for the purpose to attract converts. That's the deeper agenda behind the exile, beyond punishment for sin, and hence Beis Hamikdash was destroyed and were exiled. But the Gemara reveals that a deeper underlying intent here is to be out there amongst the nations of the world, and thereby to attract converts. So the Sikha here does not go into this, but the Arizal explains, which we've spoken about many times, the following: that a convert is not what it appears to be, not what he or she appears to be. Namely, it's not fundamentally a non-Jew becomes Jewish. And this is, and so what is it? It's really a neshama of a Jew that came down, born to non-Jewish parents, that is simply coming home. Now, why that would happen, I'll explain presently. But first, I want to share with you what the Arizal says, and this is hinted to in the language that the Gemara uses when talking in general about the laws of a convert. There are many laws that apply to a convert. So the language of the Gemara is always framed this way: Ger shenis gayer, a convert, a converted, so such and such is the law. So the Arizal asks, the language is strange. It should have said goy shenis gayer, a non-Jew converts. It's not a convert who converts. It's a non-Jew who converts and becomes a convert. So the Gemara is hinting that all along this person had the neshama, even before the actual conversion. And the conversion merely unlocks and reveals the neshama. And the deeper meaning, therefore, that Arizal explains that the Jews were exiled amongst the nations of the world only in order to attract converts. It's not only converts, these Jewish neshamas, to redeem them or reveal them, but it's a general statement about all the sparks of the divine embedded in the world. Divine sparks are embedded in all things. And when we engage the world and use it in the service of Hashem, we redeem the divine spark, which is exactly what the conversion is, the divine Jewish spark in that case. The soul, the neshama, is redeemed. And that's the deeper meaning that we're out here in the world, is to elevate it, to redeem the sparks, to illuminate, to make the whole world a home for God. Now, just to address briefly for a moment why this would be. Why would what be? Why would a non-Jewish soul, a rather Jewish soul, by heavenly decree, obviously, we don't have a choice in our birth, against your choice you are born, says the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, and against your will you die. These things are in God's hands. So why would a neshama, a Jewish neshama, be born to non-Jewish parents? The general answer to that question is that it's a very lofty soul. It's a lofty soul that is charged with the mission of elevating sparks of the divine that have fallen very deeply. In other words, anything in the world which greatly conceals God, or the more God is concealed, the more evil something is, the deeper and hidden and therefore higher is the divine source. An example, this gives us a wall of bricks that collapses. So the brick that is in the highest falls the lowest, deepest into the ground, or furthest from the wall. To explain the paradox of something being very low really is indicative of a very high source. Or another example is an overflowing container of water. The water that flows out spills out down. Below was why? Because it was at the top, at the very top. That's why it spilled down. Another example in nature is a source of light. The stronger the source of light, the further the reach. And so too, there's a very fundamental concept in Chassidus, where God is the greater God is concealed, the deeper the divinity that's invested, and when transformed and revealed, will create the greatest light. It's also true in the area of teshuvah. The person is transgressed deliberately, and then which is a very deep concealment. But through the power of teshuvah, and it has to be very powerful teshuvah, it creates, in the end, a greater light than ordinary mitzvahs. When darkness is transformed into light, it's greater light than ordinary light. And so the principle continues endlessly and manifests in virtually endless aspects of Torah and mitzvahs. So the same is true in our case here too, that this is a lofty soul, on the contrary, was charged with the mission to elevate the deeply embedded sparks in an unholy world, born into unholiness. And then when this soul connects the conversion and the mitzvahs that the soul eventually does, the soul thereby elevates every part, every aspect of the world that that soul had been part of in its journey, which is true of every one of us. Every place you go, every encounter you have, you carry it with you. And I speak of the good things, certainly, and the bad things. As for the bad things, you carry them with you. If the eyes could see the energies that surround people, sometimes would be delightful, and sometimes you'd faint from fright. All the sinful thoughts, actions, and deeds that the person did, they carry with them. But when you do tshuva, and a very powerful tshuva, then that transforms those very negative energies, because deeply embedded there is a divine spark, but it's completely obscured and virtually corrupted. It becomes then transformed into the greatest light, and hence the Baal Tshuva stands at a higher level, the true Baal Tshuva. Then the tzaddik, true tshuva is not merely, I used to do it, I don't do it. That's obviously part of it. That's the elemental part of teshuva, but the essence of tshuva is a complete inner transformation. That's not our subject, but that needs to be elaborated upon, and we have on previous occasions. The nature of teshuva and for whom does transformation take place? What does it take to transform the past? Not just to jettison it, not just to disassociate, but transform it. So the ger is really, that's why a true convert we discourage. We discourage any convert, because we're not saved. First of all, we're not saving their soul. We have to appreciate this, right? That every other faith believes that their path is the only path to God, and if you don't, so you burn in hell forever, or whatever their pretty imagery might be. You don't embrace the Savior, then you're eternal damnation. It's a fundamentally Christian concept, eternal damnation, to which we all Jews are condemned. Baruch Hashem. So they say, and Islam, every faith says that their path is done. We don't say that. Judaism, Torah mitzvah says the Jew needs to do that. As for the rest of the world, we do have a path for them. It's not Jewish. It's a universal path of godliness and mitzvahs called the 7 mitzvahs for the children of Noah. And if a non-Jew observes those mitzvahs, that the non-Jew connects to God and earns a place in the hereafter, Olam Haba. So when a non-Jew comes and seeks to convert, the law is for their good. You have to tell them, you don't have to convert, my friend. Observe the 7 Noahide laws, and you are connected to Hashem and living your life of purpose for which you were created. And we have to teach them the 7 Noahide laws, which is what I do. When a convert comes, we discourage it. Not here's the fee, and then what's going on in this city is a travesty and a tragedy for the convert and for the children that are not really Jewish. I mean, I'm not going to this now, but it's a terrible, terrible matzah. It's not unique to Montreal. We all know, I'm sure you all know personal stories of people that converted and observe virtually nothing. And even if they do a little bit, so what? The whole point of the convert is he embraces all of Yiddishkeit. That's part of the whole conversion. Complete acceptance of all the mitzvahs. Just to do a traditional Judaism, that's not a conversion. And by the way, since I'll address the questions of people, but that's not fair. People say there's so many Jews who do far less than they're Jewish. And here, this so-called convert, you're questioning the conversion because they just have a Friday night and a Seder and a basic kosher. I'd say they're not so Shabbos day. But they keep a lot of stuff and much more than most Jews. So why aren't you considering them Jewish? Of course, the question is foolish because a Jew is born Jewish is Jewish. Whether he keeps anything or not. Somebody wants to convert. So this is the means. If you can't, it's fine. Be a righteous Gentile. There's no reason for you to convert. In other words, imagine someone in Yugoslavia wants to come to Montreal and become a citizen. So they apply for citizenship, and they do the office does the background check, and there's some misdemeanor, white collar crime. So they deny the person citizenship. The person says, "What are you talking about? You have sitting in Canada, you have murderers and rapists. And because of that white collar crime, you're not allowing me citizenship." To which the visa officer would say, says, "You're right. But they're born in Canada, so they're Canadians. Are they good Canadians?" That's another question. If you want to come to Canada, this is the Canadian ideal. Respect for the laws respect for the law. Your past shows that you don't respect this law. Whatever the case, you can embellish it to make it more real, but you get the point. The argument, but there's so many Jews who don't do it. So that's it. Moot point entirely. They're born Jewish. Are they doing what they should? No. But does that in any way make them less Jewish? You're less of a Canadian because you're a Canadian. You're born in Canada. You're a Canadian. You're born Jewish. You're a Jewish. Although being born Jewish is deeper than being born a Canadian, because you can leave Canada and renounce your citizenship, and you can never renounce your Jewishness. Is the Jew living up to the mission for which he or she is Jewish? That's another important question. The answer is, in many cases, not yet. So when the convert comes, we discourage it completely. So here's the thing. If despite all the discouragement, and the non-Jew goes back and is reading and observing all the 7 Noahide laws, this is what we want to hear. And after a long and difficult journey, by design, deliberately, the righteous convert ends up saying something like this. This is the words or the sentiment. I can't explain this. I must become Jewish. I'm keeping all the 7 Noahide laws, but this emptiness is still there. And they start on their own to observe Shabbos and Kashrus. And the editor should tell you, the righteous convert, we have to hold them back because a non-Jew may not observe Shabbos. So in the process of conversion, they have to do something on Shabbos so they transgress. Torah is clear. This is only for the Jew. It's hard for them. I want to keep everything. No, until you convert. All right. So they wait. God says, God says. On the contrary, we're holding them back. Why is that? Because they are Jewish. Because they have a neshama, a very high neshama, which has to be explained. All the neshamas come from the same source. What do you mean high, low? That's not for now. We discussed in the Chassidus classes. But high neshama, and therefore, like the homing pigeon, it just you have to come home, and there's nothing stands in my way, because it's who I am. If it's a question of becoming something, and if it gets too difficult, I don't become. And even after I became it, keep this, keep that. Everything is a whole negotiation. It's all relative. Do more than this one now. But if it's who I am, it's not a discussion. It's who I am. That's the true convert. And again, that's why a true convert is held in the highest esteem. Like we're reading here, Rabbi Vadia Hager, that Rambam writes to. And as you know, in MTC community, we have a number that are held in the greatest esteem because, on the contrary, not only Jewish, but a very high neshama, which God entrusted with the mission to elevate a level, a strata of his world where he's so concealed that the ordinary Jew can't go there. That's forbidden. Don't go there. You can't elevate. And the Torah says, don't eat, go, do, experience something. What does it mean? There's godliness there. So why can't I eat it, engage it, and then use it in the service of God? The answer is you cannot, because it's so concealed that you'll not be able to redeem it. But the convert can. Baal Teshuva can. Through high Teshuvah. Engaged in the forbidden world. What does the word forbidden mean in Hebrew? The word forbidden in Hebrew is osur. Osur means forbidden. You know what osur means? Tied down. What's the Hebrew word for permissible? Mutter. You know what mutter means? Mutter means free, unfettered. What does this mean? Tied down, unfettered. It's talking about the divine spark. If the Torah says this food, this relationship, this business, this place is forbidden, it means there's godliness there, but it's tied down. You will not be able to redeem it. Don't go there. If you do, you become part of the problem. You'll add to the concealment. If the Torah says it's permissible, kosher, the word kosher means fitting. That's what kosher means. Mutter means unfettered, and kosher, permissible, classically, this classic translation, as in Matir Asurim, every day in Shemoneh Esrei, 3 times a day, he unties the bound or frees the bound, unfettered, fettered, same word. Kosher means fitting. Fitting for what? To be elevated, to be used. It's a state of readiness. Kosher means in a state of readiness. If you engage in it in a godly way, you elevate it. If you engage in it in an ungodly way, you degrade it. It's neutral. It's ready. And it's our choice how we engage the world. We reveal godliness, or we, God forbid, add to the concealment temporarily. So, yet the convert comes, and the Baal Teshuva, who did things that are forbidden, and the convert is born in unholiness, no mikveh, nothing. And then connects to God, so that's a world where it's also tied down. And yet, the power of Teshuvah redeems even this spark. The Ger redeems even those sparks, that whole world of which the Ger was a part of. Could be an even idolatrous world that they elevate through their Teshuvah, their connection to Hashem. That's why, again, a true convert is held in the highest esteem, because tremendous elevation that this Jew has brought about and brings about in their service of Hashem. And that's the way a convert should be treated. First of all, welcomed. The first meeting is, my child, you don't have to convert to have a relationship with God or a place in paradise. Live a righteous life, the 7 Noahide laws. So certainly if someone's converting in order to marry somebody, that's like the first, can't be a reason. It's got to be for you. It's got to be your personally driven journey. Because a boyfriend and a girlfriend, to make the family happy, to make the guy happy. That's the first, strike against it. Doesn't mean that in a rare case that may spark it, in the end they become a righteous convert. That has happened. Started because of the boyfriend and the girlfriend. But then, and I've seen cases, they leave the boyfriend or the girlfriend and they go, the journey continues on their own, or they remain. But frankly, it's rare. It's rare because the whole thing began not for this burning, insatiable deep longing desire to be Jewish, but rather because they met this person now to make everybody happy, the in-laws, the parents, whatever it is, the conversion. And there's no shortage of rabbis that do it, tragically. That accommodate. Even in cases where it's forbidden because, for example, she wants to marry a Kohen. I'm not saying any names, but rabbis that do it, talking Orthodox rabbis. And it's a tremendous tragedy. A Kohen may not marry a convert. But aside from that, the conversions are just, go through this course, pay the fee, and goodbye, Charlie. And it's a hefty fee. Because of all of this shenanigans to the history, so the Vadair tried to centralize conversions with it, but it was undermined. They tried to do it in one place and have a standard of a high standard, a good standard, a proper halachic standard, like other cities in the world, England, London, rather. So it's a Vadair, and there was whatever, it was undermined by rabbis who just continued doing their own thing. So for a few years, it was like that. It was like one good standard and you could count on it, but no longer. It's a tragic, tragic story. And the biggest tragedy is the convert, the biggest travesties to the convert themselves. And the children. And the children. The stories that I've seen. Here's a story that happens so often. The mother converts. And it's one of these again. She did to marry the father, and the house wasn't a Shem Shabbos house, period. Did not observe that. But then the kid becomes like frum. The kid becomes Bal Tshuva. It happens in the best of families. The kid becomes Bal Tshuva. Now the kid wants to marry. And they're marrying another boy or girl, yeshiva boy frum. They go to yeshiva, go to Israel, to the Bal Tshuva yeshiva. So then there's a whole gewalt conversion of the mother, officially Orthodox, but it really doesn't. It's questionable. Can't say yes, it can't say no. It was an Orthodox rabbi, it was a bezdin, but she never really kept anything. And gewalt. And now the child wants, but I want 100%. I don't want. The child now is like, it's Bal Tshuva from kid. You know what happens? The tragedy stories. On the day of the chuppah, the kid didn't know. The day of chuppah comes out that in Israel, remember a story. Mother's conversion was questionable. So the kid on the day of the chuppah has to go through a conversion. Just, for themselves, 100% gear. A horrible story. I never knew this because they thought they were Jewish. And then they find out that there's a question mark, a very big question mark. And there are thousands of kids like this, tens of thousands. It's not fair on them, not fair on the child, not fair on the convert. But if there would be, if we would do our job as the rabbinate should, everybody, and keep to the halachic, forever, eternal standards of Yiddishkeit, then we wouldn't have this problem. And also, I should add to that, people would think twice. A young boy or a girl would think twice about dating a non-Jewish girl, knowing that conversion is not an easy option. They know that the rabbi does it. The friends did it, so I'm sad to say this, but the rabbinate, in this sense, bears responsibility. You're making it easy for them. They would know that there's no way that their boyfriend, girlfriend will be converted unless they're 100% sincere. It could start with them. But then it's got to be their own journey, and it's a whole rigorous process. Then they're not going to start because they don't want to upset their parents and upset their. They don't start off, I want to marry a non-Jew. No young Jewish boy or girl has that attitude. Just meet the girl or boy and fall in love. And they know it's okay. They start dating because they know that worst case scenario, she'll convert. If that door is closed, or it's only open for the sincere converts, for many, they wouldn't start. It just doesn't pay. And they would just go up with a Jewish boy or girl. So who's responsible? I mean, there's much more I could tell you, but I won't, because that's enough. Painful enough. But what we're explaining now, friends, is, let's get back to our subject. So why is it that the 2 out of 3 in the time of exile, 100% conversion? What about the sacrifice, the korban? Why? Since there's no Beis Hamikdash, so how is the conversion complete? And it is. So much so that Rabbi said, I remember last week I told you, you're going to know that Mashiach comes. A convert that converts get clear, a convert that converts in the time of the Beis Hamikdash and didn't bring his or her korban may not eat his sacrificial food till they bring their korban. However, a convert that converts now for the last 2,000 years, and Mashiach comes today, and there's Thanksgiving offerings today, the convert may eat of it immediately. As for their conversion korban, they'll bring it. But they're 100% Jewish, they can eat of any sacrifice. We explained this over the last few weeks, why that is so. You remember? The point of it was that that meal and tefillah, there's 3 things. Accepting all of Yiddishkeit, all mitzvahs. Then, for the case of the male, circumcision and immersion. In the case of the female, just immersion. That's what enters. That's how you enter into the covenant. What's about the korban? The korban is to remove the lion. If there's no lion, there's no need to remove it. You're 100%. That was the gist of the whole. The difference between the 2 and the 3. The 2 is how you walk into the house. The other one is just to remove the key to unlock the door. But if the door is not locked, you don't need a key. So the door is not unlocked now. There's no lock today because there's no Beis Hamikdash. There's no need for a key. There's no need for a korban. The conversion is 100%. But the question we have to explain is, but why is it? Why is it these 2 bring you and the other one just removes an obstacle? Why isn't bringing the korban also a way to enter? That's what we're going to explain now spiritually. But again, the big chiddush that we're learning here is, and I want you to remember this, you should know, you learned the sikh, you're going to tell everybody. The converts are going to know right away. They'll be bringing offerings and Thanksgiving and Yom Tov and so on. Can I participate? I didn't get a chance to bring my korban because there's a long lineup. And yes, you can. You're 100% Jewish. And you're on the front of the line. Others will question that. But have to bring your korban. You learned the sikh. The korban is not what makes you Jewish. It's to remove the barrier to bring a korban. If the barrier didn't exist even when you were converted, then you're 100%. And that carries you through even after the Beis Hamikdash is built. It means you still have to bring your korban. Like everybody has to bring whatever korban is. But it doesn't prevent you from participating in other korbanos immediately. Again, why? Why the distinctions? That's what we're up to right now. So we're up to Ois Vav. Yeah, with me? Okay, we had a little digression this morning, but it's important to know. It's important to know. So for your own children, friends, you just don't go down that she'll convert or he'll convert path. It's a very, very dicey. Drill into the kids. And the truth, I'm going to add this, is a lot of parents do this. You must marry Jewish, drill into the kids. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. What does work? They're so inspired as Jews and so committed that naturally just want to marry either a truly righteous convert, if that happens, or another Jew who's committed as they are. They're just going to want to. It doesn't work to say, and I've seen this, I've been around a little bit. Parent says, from day one, I told my kid, you got to marry Jewish, and and they meet the girl or boy, and since the conversion option is open, and then they do this conversion that is gray. I'm not talking conservative and reform, I'm talking about the Orthodox conversions. And then there's a whole question with the children and it. So what's the answer for your children marrying Jewish? Inspired. Don't even say the discussion. I promise you, in the Torah observant homes, it's not even discussed. I mean, you have to date a Jewish boy, Jewish girl. You don't have to say that. He doesn't want anything else. Inspired, committed Jewish. That's the only way to do it, from within. From within. And let's be clear, we're not being dismissive of non-Jews, God forbid, on the contrary. On the contrary, we're saying when you don't convert, you don't need conversion. Not a mitzvah to convert, because you're wonderful and fine as you are, as a righteous Gentile. And a righteous Gentile is in many ways higher, even in the sense than the Jew, in a sense. Our sages tell us. I want you to consider this, that the Gemara, the Talmud devotes more space, relatively speaking, to the 7 Noahide laws than to all other 613. There's only 7 Noahide laws. But relatively speaking, the discussion and the explanation, there's more space devoted to it. And the 7 Noahide laws were given before the Torah was given. One was given to Adam and 6 to Noah. That's what they call the 7 Noahide laws. And all humanity begins that way. It's the origins of everybody. Nothing to be ashamed of. Adam was a Noahide. Okay, he was born before Noah, but he was a Noahide. God's creation that he made with his own hands was not Jewish. We're not saving anybody's soul, and not putting anybody down, and they convert them, and it's a whole. So what's conversion? What it really is in the neshama that is born to non-Jewish for this divine reason that's coming home, and that's it. Always was a Jewish neshama, and had a special mission to elevate the deep sparks. That's what a conversion is. Okay. Let's continue. Ois Vav on page 193. Hezbollah, the explanation. Everybody has a place, yeah? Hezbollah, I have it's an explanation to the distinction we've been pointing out. El Sivdalit in chapter 4. Bein Mila u'Tfila lebein Korban. The difference between Mila, again, circumcision, and Tefillah, immersion, and Korban. What did we say? Shedavke Mila u'Tfila, only the first two actually bring one in italics there. Machnisa is esager lebris. That's how the convert enters the covenant. In the case of the female, it's just the immersion and the acceptance again of Torah. The Ila Korban Meisei, we said the Korban doesn't bring you in. The Korban just removes the line, removes the impediment. If there's no impediment, no need. Why? What's the basis of the two enter and the third doesn't enter? It just removes. It's a key for the lock, and if there's no lock, you don't need it. Answer. Now we get down to the crux of it, friends. And I told you that what we're learning has application to us every day. Every day. Conversion is something that applies to every yid every day. How so? A Jew, a person becoming Jewish to conversion, there's two general dimensions. Huh? Yeah, there's two general dimensions in conversion. As we see, if we look at the conversion of the Jewish people, the Matan Torah, remember, before the giving of the Torah, we all were children of Noah, Bnei Noach. And then we entered into the special covenant with God. And what's basically the covenant? The basic covenant is that I want to say something else. Okay, we'll do this next week, just to complete our discussion a little bit. So, what's this Jewish thing? If all other religions we understand, they make sense. Our way is the only way, and if you don't do it, you're burned in hell, or we'll kill you. You're an infidel, and you shouldn't live. and you're my ticket to 72 virgins, whatever they have their motivations. But it makes sense. If you believe in your faith, anybody's got to do it. So why isn't Judaism for everybody? The answer is, what is Judaism? Basically, what is Judaism? It's we are chosen by Hashem to be responsible for the rest of the world. That the rest of the world live godly lives. That's what being Jewish is. That's what chosen means. People are very uncomfortable with the notion of chosen because they misinterpret it. They assume that when we say the chosen people, it implies rejection. So if you have two things in front of you, you have a choice. You took one, so you by default, you rejected the other. It's not what chosen means. It's the opposite of that. God chose us to be responsible for the rest of the world. Like a teacher, for example, that would choose in the classroom, a monitor, a kid, to help him run the affairs of the classroom. He's rejecting the other kids. On the contrary, to be a more effective teacher, you need one of the kids to help the kid, to help the teacher. Chosen means to be responsible. The opposite. So
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Yes, yeah.
So why are we not doing more to engage the outside world if there's 6 billion people? Like, why are you not having classes just with Gentiles and trying to get hundreds of people just to, not just you in particular, I'm just saying, like, it's really not a thing. Judaism is all about us and teaching us and our kids. I know in theory what you're saying, but in practicality, we do not do that at all.
It's a very good question. The answer is it is happening. I used to give such classes, and they come and go in time. I have lots of Gentiles that watch my videos, and the videos, Hasidus, which talks about God, and the classes that I give, they're not halachic, watched by non-Jews. I have a whole correspondence with a German Islamic young lady. Now I'm guiding her in her marriage and so on. So this is happening, and you Google this. It should be happening more. I agree with you, but I just want you to know. There are chapters called the 7 Noahites, chapters throughout America, led by one of them by a former pastor who announced publicly at his church that he's renouncing Christianity and becoming a Noahide and teaching the 7 Noahide laws. So the things are happening, not to perhaps you're right, not to the degree they should be, but Chabad as a whole, we have material on the subject. So much so, you should know, that in honor of Rebbe's birthday for many years, many presidents, I have a beautiful book of it, like a coffee table book. Throughout the years, the presidents of the United States, in signing a proclamation honoring the Rebbe, and what he's done, talk about the 7 Noahide laws and actually list them. And just this week, the Shliach Minnesota by Moishe Feller is opening the Senate or something, and you know what, some big honor that they give. And what is he talking about? The 7 Noahide laws, the charity box there, because charity is one of the things. So Chabad actually does in this area. It could be, should be more. Yeah, for sure. One of the answers why not more being done is because resources are limited, and we have to reach out to our fellow Jews. The first responsibility is your family, is your fellow Jew to be that lamplighter. So that's where a lot of the energies go, but it's not exclusively. The truth is, I tell you, if the whole Orthodox world would help us in outreach, everybody, instead of, in many cases, putting up walls and being antagonistic, then we could use our time, many of us, to outreach to non-Jews, as you're describing, and as is a light unto the nations, chosen to be responsible. But at the same time, it is incumbent upon us, and everybody can do this in your everyday engagement and encounter with. We're in a secular world, a non-Jewish world. We are all charged with the obligation to be a light unto the nations. They have to see that you're an observant Jew, and thank God comes off your lips, and you're honest, and you're you're sensitive and you're a good person, and goodness and kindness we need to emanate constantly. We have to know that in all our encounters with the non-Jewish world, we have to be an example. We have to inspire, and we should use the opportunity to talk about God where possible. I'll tell you a story that happened with me. I mean, I have 100 stories, but this one I wrote up. You may have read it in the Mosaic a number of years ago. It was actually, we were going to Australia from my brother, blessed memory, his yahrzeit was Friday, Chaim, his son's David's bar mitzvah, his first bar mitzvah. So the bar mitzvah, I'll just tell the story very briefly. The bar mitzvah was a Sunday morning, and it was a breakfast, and it took place in a hotel opposite the MCG in downtown Melbourne. What's the MCG? So every Australian knows what that is. It's the Melbourne Cricket Ground. That's what it stands for. And it's a place where cricket is played during the summer and Aussie rules during the winter months. It's, for the Australian, it's hallowed ground, sacred ground. It holds 120,000 people. And every week on a Saturday or Sunday, is at least 100,000 people that are there, at least, every week. And you should know that every day 10 games are being played, and a small turnout is 30,000 people every Saturday. That Australia, sports is number one. We grew up that way, even Hasidic Jewish kids. Sports was a huge part of our lives, which is not a bad thing. The weather, outdoors, always playing. Anyway, so the game, there was a breakfast. So the mitzvah finished early, and across the road is a game playing, Australia versus Pakistan or something. I personally had never been to a cricket match, but some of my other brothers had. So let's all go over. So we cross the road, we go in, you pay it. I think it was even free after halftime, it's free, I don't remember. Maybe you paid, I don't know. And we're dressed like Hasidim. We're coming first of all from a bar mitzvah with the black hats and stuff. Now, cricket is a slow game, if you know it. It's a slow game. There's a lot of lulls. And the crowd entertains itself primarily by drinking beer. That's one of the big pastimes. Anyway, so we're sitting there in the bleachers, and we're obviously quite the sight. And these Aussies, young, all ages. How did it start? It began with, we brought over some cookies and stuff, some of the dessert with us. And so we're sharing it, with the crowd, with the people around us, who, wow, thank you very much. And so we're going to share back. I'll give you, so I explained, I'm sorry, we can't eat, kosher. I think for some of it's the first time actually encountered a Jew in their life. For some, for sure. So listen to what happened, such a telling story. So I explained to them that we Jewish all need kosher. What's kosher? I briefly explained what kosher is. A whole discussion ensues. They're asking us about our dress. They're curious, the black hat, and they're wearing, go see the tzitzis. One of them says, this is during the lull in the game, and he says loud, these words. All right, he says, you guys are the chosen people. Tell us what we have to do. Quintessential moment. Down under at a cricket game. Because they were asking us about us and what things we were doing. And he's saying, okay, very nice, but he sensed that what's your mission is, you are responsible. So what should we be doing? So that led to discussion, the 7 Noahide laws. More needs to be done. There's no question about it. But like on a global, national level, and things are done. Things have been done by Chabad everywhere at a national level. When Harper, this is also in the book, in honor of his birthday, also wrote a letter of congratulations, etc. In that letter, and I actually crafted it and said he should see what, he didn't know what to write, what do you say? I wrote about the 7 Noahide laws, and that was the letter he signed. I have a copy, not the original copy. More needs to be done on that level, but most important is you and I on a daily basis. We're running out of time. I'm going to tell you this. You see, unfortunately, I'm not blaming, but just as the reality, Jews, we've been on the defense. The non-Jews been the enemy for centuries. And that developed a culture of it's okay to defraud and to cheat. Survive, and many times, if you didn't, you couldn't survive. If Jews would follow the laws of the land, you would starve to death. The taxes, etc., and being in the ghetto. So Jews had to circumvent the law for survival. And the non-Jew was, for the most part, the enemy. A policeman on the street, you wanted to avoid his gaze. You made eye contact, you were asking for trouble. That's how it was for millennia, at least for the last 500 years in Europe, and to some degree in the Middle Eastern countries. It all changed in the last 50 years. But for many Jews, they still have the old mentality of the non-Jews the enemy, and the government's the enemy, and the police was the enemy. The Yitzhahara, I'm not saying that it applies in this case, but that language is a carryover of the old. The Rebbe says, no. It's Erev Mashiach, it's a new world that's opening, and the non-Jewish world is respectful of Judaism. On the contrary, like the story I told you, all right, you guys, the chosen people, tell us what we should do. That is a quintessential moment that defines our era. And no longer should be on the defensive. Now it's being on offensive, as you're saying. Be a light and engage and use the opportunity, and certainly be respectful of the laws if they don't defy Judaism, etc. It's not black and white. As right now, we know the police saying it's okay. Okay, you got to use your intelligence, but the attitude is, it's not that they're the enemy. It could be foolish, but not the enemy. It could make a mistake in policy, but they're not the enemy. They're not the enemy. Nowhere in the Western world, virtually. It's a new era before Mashiach. So use the opportunity to engage, to inspire. So Chabad has and does this in the White House and so on. I think there's a shir goes on there in the White House. And every year, again, around his birthday, there's whole celebration involving Jew and non-Jew. And they talk about the Rebbe's teachings, Education Day, USA. We're running out of time, but moment of silence. Here's a huge thing, Dave, that we do here in the city. In Montreal, all over the world, the Rebbe said moment of silence. There's a huge campaign, an incredible campaign. We're running out of time to explain it, but that every day should begin in the public schools with a moment of silence. Not prayer, because, separation of church and state, but the Rebbe said separation of church and state by the founding fathers is not in order to abolish the church, but to protect us. On the contrary, it was to protect religion, not to dismiss it. Okay, but there should be a moment of silence. It starts every day that each child should think, but whatever they want, the parents, it's not up to the school. And the idea of thinking about that there's an eye that sees and an ear that hears, there's a transcendent morality. It's not about skirting the law, but respecting the law because it has a divine source when it's the moral laws. It's a whole discussion. What this has in the public schools in America, inner city schools where this is observed, how it's changed the whole culture in the school on every level. Black kids, red kids, white kids, green kids. So this is one of a big campaign of Chabad. Look that up online. I went to Merton School and other schools where it's done in schools here, it's up to the individual school to start the day with a moment of silence. That's part of the 7 Nochide laws. To start the day with a meditation, reflection. Why am I here? What's the purpose? And we leave it to the parents to convey to the child what to think then. But just, what the thing is? Just allowing the kid a moment of silence before the day begins already just invites this kind of feeling and thought. I start the day with a meditation. This is a global campaign of Chabad that's being done. It's called Moment of Silence. And other things too. More needs to be done. Chabad's a small army. We need more. We need more. Like I said, if the whole Orthodox world will do what it has to, outreach with love, etc., then we could use our resources more so for reaching out to non-Jews on a more global level, etc. But again, we'll conclude with the obligation on each one of us that's where it starts. I have to know that every encounter I have with a non-Jew is going to lead to an inspiration, a sanctification of God's name. They're going to go, wow, this is beautiful. Admire the Jew, and more importantly, be inspired that they should live more moral lives. Use the opportunity to talk about, without preaching, but in a loving way, to talk about God, to talk about goodness, kindness. That's goodness and kindness for our fellow human being. Every opportunity, and they should see that they were charitable, they were honest to a fault. They got to see it in our behavior. And again, a lot of Jews, it's like in business, no, you got to, because it's a carryover from hundreds of years of survival. And we've got to shed that. That's the exile mentality, is we have Israel, we're going into redemption, it's a new world. It's a new world where they have to be proactive, the light and the world is receptive to this. And thank God, slowly the attitudes are shifting. The truth is, starts with the Jews, within Jews. It wasn't so long ago, if you weren't religious, they ever worked Herculean effort to change the attitude within Jewry towards fellow Jews, secular Jews, and now towards non-Jews. Tear down these barriers, not the differences, the barriers. The Jew is a Jew, that a light unto the nation. So there's work to be done, but there's great progress. And again, each one of us has to do what we have to do, our role. Okay, so friends,